Good job, Spain. Good job, both teams. It is a 4 tie for the affirmative team. The student vote was split right down the middle, and the 4 other judges voted affirmative, so the affirmative advances.
I'll go really quick because I was first in. I think that you probably had more games in the block than you did with 2&R. I think there were just some key, I think just like devastating defense that was conceded. I think that you don't win the counter plan. On top, I think that this international fiat question about utopia was conceded in the block, and it makes sense to me. You fiat something the status quo that they can't do, right? Just to avoid their majority of their offense. They have decent reasons why it's uneducational for debate, why it's not fair, which is easy enough reason to reject the counter plan. In that case, I would be disad versus the case. I don't think you're winning any of the case because you kind of banked on the counter plan. Means that 100% probability, I vote I think the disad when I get there will make sense why that way. I also think you don't win or isolate a good enough answer to the solvency deficit. The United States has not only the technology, but the telescope itself already built, and that Russia does not have that developed yet. And I think that they're winning a decent enough argument against this O'Neill evidence that Russia doesn't have the capabilities to send anything to space. I don't know if that's true, but I don't have the answer to it. It's probably the bigger thing. On the disad, I think that you just concede a couple things. The biggest one is you don't have uniqueness in the 2&R. I don't have an answer to uniqueness in the 2&R, which means just their extension of this TAA evidence, where he kind of talks about the debt ceiling and that there's no Republicans on board, is good enough by itself to say there's not uniqueness in the disad. But I also think you can see this Cooper card, which it's not a good card, but it's not answered, and it's not key, and things like military ties or economic ties would check that back. So absent those things, I think Case wins 100% probability of extinction. I don't necessarily buy your argument that the disad would turn the case, because I think he gives decent enough defensive claims that we could probably still have a war and fund things like one satellite in space. It wouldn't be that big of a trade-off. And I think they win an external risk of a medium asteroid, meaning we would have like a collapse of the environment and those things.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I'll just say that I struggle with this a lot when I listed. For a couple of reasons. I think one of the main reasons is sort of, I'm sympathetic to the 2&R because I think that the 1AR does not do a lot of debating of the block. And so I kind of feel uncomfortable giving you credit for some of these arguments. Like, I'm glad that you didn't go for the non-proletarian because I don't know that it necessarily rises this level of an extension. But I think that ultimately, I also threw out the counter plan. I think that you made good arguments in the block that defend international fiat, but I just think that the 2&R was some of the time pressure and how heavy it didn't get to some of their best offense because logic kind of internally turns your education argument. And in that world, I think that minuscule defense on the disad really does kind of get the job done. I think that, you know, I consider that question last. I don't necessarily agree that y'all were ahead on the like Russia can't question. First of all, that evidence is not very good, not conclusive, and I think that, you know, I don't weigh evidence too heavily at the camp tournament, but like based on this sort of like Russia doesn't have capability to get to space, that argument, my understanding of it sort of balloons in the 2AR in a way that I don't think necessarily that the solvency deficit was in 1AR. But other than that, I thought that you guys did great.
I guess I heard these international fiat arguments just a little bit differently. I think that the utopian fiat argument seems separate to me from the international fiat kinds of arguments. So the way that I agree that that's conceded and you all need to be a little bit more precise about this, I think you all should have impacted that lack of a solvency advocate for the no nukes use by Russia as an independent voting issue separate from the international fiat arguments. Because then you can, if you lose the international fiat arguments, can still capitalize on that. I think you're doing enough, and I think that it means that all of it supercharges the ask that counterclaim can't solve because they don't have the tech, and the tech that they probably would use would be sort of bad. So I think the impact to the solvency deficit outweighs the risk of the net benefit. I do think y'all need a more precise answer to this war will channel funding away from the plan because that then at least mitigates some of your solvency a little bit too. And I don't think that the 1AR in particular is answering that argument. But ultimately, I just don't think there's much risk left on the side, both for the uniqueness issues, but also this like weak winner and the Cooper Smith evidence and stuff, which isn't very good. One other suggestion that I would make to y'all is, I don't think the 1AR extends this enough to make it a real viable option, but like you're doing a smart job and everybody should do this on permutations to explain why the permutation would be a shield, and your explanation of the permutation in the 2AC and the 2AR that you would use Russia's money and our good tech, I think that's really super smart, but at the moment that you're extending that argument in the 1AR, you kind of are like, I'm not going to extend that argument, and it wasn't clear to me if what you were saying was you weren't extending the Russia funding part of the argument or not, so you need to keep internal dialogue internal, and just like extend that permutation. Y'all don't have an answer to this, like to say that the permutation still links to SCIPTA when all of your link arguments are contingent upon spending, essentially, is like really, really super problematic. So y'all need to be a little bit more precise in debating the permutations when they're offering a shield explanation for the permutation.
Other than that, was the 1AR counterplan work like? How was that?
Well, I mean, those are a couple of like kind of big things.
You
did concede this impact for the flow of the power, which I think would have been problematic, which I think you should highlight substantially more in the 1AR. You could have conceded things like Mandelbaum and been like, fine, Mandelbaum doesn't matter. You had conceded impact or just add, new add on to the ad, proliferation leads to extinction, probably would turn the disadd in some capacity.
Because it means it's not SCIPTA that's necessary to contain North Korean proliferation, it's U.S. leadership generally. Does that make sense about why it would solve that if it impacted disadd?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I thought that because of the utopian fiat question, the counterplan would be rejected in the 2AR. I'm not ever going to be willing to go far enough to reject the team absent like some extremely compelling reason, which I didn't think was present. And given that, I didn't think the Cooper evidence rose to the threshold of an argument, but I did think that the non-unique argument, which given absent making uniqueness argument for 2AR, in my mind brings the risk of the disadd close low enough that I would be willing to put on case because there was no defense on case.
Since would it have been better to go for answer the counterplans, the theory on the counterplan, and then go for case and then case defense and SCIPTA? Because it seemed like the 1AR didn't do like that good of a job answering like my analysis from the case exploiting answering like.
You had a lot of specific answers like North Korea and South Korea is a unique scenario outside of the Mandelbaum evidence that I think was developed much better in the block.
I don't even think that, it's not like international fiat, I don't need to know that you need to win the international fiat is good if you're the counterplan, it just goes away. Like, international fiat is bad, it's the reason why you don't get it. So don't spend time in CNR answering international fiat ever if you're not going to
When I determined, I guess I always answer like the theory before taking out of like counterplans or critiques. Like, when do I determine that the theory is supporting the issue?
Well, I think that conditionality is the only theory that you really have to answer if you're not going for the position. Because if like kicking the position is the issue, that's the reason why conditionality is bad. That's not like a reason why an Asian counterplan or international fiat or something like that is bad. I mean, obviously maybe you need like a 2-sentence blurb at some point if someone's like really freaking out about 50 cents or something. Yeah, but you don't need to win like an offensive reason why it's allowed.
And most of their international fiat bad arguments were about their inability to contest the solvency of the counterplan, which means that just getting rid of the counterplan addresses those issues. It's not like they were making a like, oh my good God, I couldn't say anything else in the debate as a result of your counterplan, which is why those condo arguments are more important. I think you got like absurdly bogged down in the link debate on politics, and I don't know what that was all about, but
All right, thanks for judging.
Thank you.
Thank you.